Look at that plant. I want you to know that everything was grown in my garden. Don't touch that plant!
Is it poisonous?
She'll become part of the plant.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Flower Power Garden Hour. I'm your host, Marlene, and tonight we're going to talk about earthworms and soil and why soil is so important. So with me is Luke Arthur. He is the CEO and founder of Simple Grow, and they are out of Houston, Missouri. Don't make the same mistake I did, not Houston, Texas, like most people think. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So, I'm always trying to tell people that, and we've all made this mistake where you get so excited about gardening and you skip the soil and you go directly to planting. And then you try to overcome everything by basically throwing, fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers at your plants. But really, that's only doing one little thing with the soil. With soil, there's soil structure, there's soil health, and it's really important. So that's why I like having people on who are, it may not be the most glamorous side of gardening, but to me, it's the most important. So how the heck did you get involved and start this company?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I didn't really know a whole lot about gardening and, organic gardening or worm castings when I first learned about this and helped start the business. But my business partner, Dustin, he's into gardening, and he was reading like a gardening magazine or something and learned about worm castings and just how powerful they were at, building and restoring the soil. And just, he was really intrigued by that. And he brought it to me. We worked together at a different company. We worked at a solar company. We installed like solar equipment, in houses and businesses. And so he just brought that to me and said, hey, this is a pretty cool thing. We should start a business around this and make worm castings and sell it. And I was like, well, I have never heard of this before and I don't know anything about it, but I'll look into it. And at first I didn't really think it was a viable thing. I was like, why, if worm castings was like a thing you could sell, like why hasn't it been done already? Like why isn't there a big, miracle grow of worm castings or something that makes this? And so I looked into it and learned that it was, somewhat more difficult to make on a large scale, and there was quite a bit of demand, and organic gardening was growing. And so I kind of got behind it and realized that it was a viable thing. And so we just started, learning how to make it. We started making it in his garage. He had like probably an 80 square foot garage. This was 5 years ago. And so we just started making it there on our own, and then, sold it all, every bit we could make, just to local people. And then we built a website and started selling stuff online and kept getting more and more orders. And we got a warehouse, started making it on a larger scale. And then this past year, we upgraded to a much larger warehouse. So now we're in like a 60,000 square foot building, making nothing but worm castings in there. So,
Wow. So a lot of people want to go organic, vegetable wise, cannabis wise. And I always say if it wasn't for the cannabis industry, we still might be in the dark ages as far as organic fertilizers, organic pesticides, lighting, because the strict rules about what they could use on it. And I would say cannabis growers tend to be the most finicky, but then your homeowners, your home growers as well, who are grown organic, want to make sure they know what's in it. And I think that maybe that's probably why you guys found a nice niche, because when you see the, I'm not knocking Miracle Grow or these companies, you see their whole entire line of products, and then they have like earthworm castings. And you're like, well, that's probably not made in-house. You have no idea what's put into that. You have no idea how that's shipped, if it's been sitting out there, how old it is. So something like earthworm castings, I think people know, okay, I want to make sure it's coming from a reputable company that's maybe focused on that. And so that's probably why you guys are, started out, and are doing so well so fast, because it's something that most gardeners are like, well, I want to know exactly where it's coming from. So did you guys literally start with getting worms in your garage? And
Yep. That's what you just mentioned is correct. I think a lot of people are concerned about what they're, like if you're making vegetables, you're concerned about the chemicals and all that stuff that you're growing them with. You don't want to consume that. So now that more people are becoming more aware of that, they're looking for organic fertilizers. And like you said, the cannabis industry, it's huge. People trying to find a good, reliable organic fertilizer or soil amendment that you can use. But yeah, it's so important to make sure you know where it's coming from. And like that's why when we went through we're actually certified organic through the USDA process, as an organic input material. So to go through that process of getting certified took us a while, and it took a lot of just information, and we have to certify where everything came from, the inputs and everything. So it is a process, and I think that is a big part of why we've been able to be successful in this industry so far. But as far as when we started out, yeah, we actually Dustin, my business partner, found a place that makes this on a big scale, and they were looking for people to teach to make it so that they could be suppliers for that company, basically, because they couldn't keep up with demand. So like they had a shortfall of product that they needed every single year. So they were looking for people like us that wanted to learn how to do it. So we went up there and actually learned how to do it in person, and it was kind of like a little class or whatever you want to call it, learning how to make worm castings. So we bought all the materials and worms and everything from them to get started, and just started right in his garage, and then took it from there.
So let's actually even start and go back to what are worm castings? Because we use the nice term worm castings, but is it
Yeah.
truly just worm manure, or is there more
Yep,
to
it's
it?
just worm manure. Yep. And
Okay.
there's also some nuance there too. Like the kind we make is just straight worm manure. Some castings you can get out there, it's like a mixture of castings and compost, because they'll actually feed the worms compost. Like they have them in a big bin and they just feed them, whatever. And then they're eating that and making the castings, and then they take the whatever's in there and sell that as worm castings. Well, ours is filtered out. There's no compost fed to the worms or anything. It's just the castings. So there are, different grades you can get.
So the you're feeding the earthworms, and what you're feeding them has to be certified organic. So they eat food waste, correct?
Ours actually eat mostly black peat, and then we supplement that with an organic grain mixture that we sprinkle on top of that.
Okay.
So it's a combination of those two things.
Okay, so that's organic. So then the byproduct is organic, and so you're selling, and what you're using is truly worm casting. So that's important. So when people are looking at worm castings, you may not be getting just a bag of worm castings. It could be, like you said, mixed in with some compost, which may not be bad, but if you're
Right.
you want to make sure that you're paying for what you're getting. Okay, so then you have the wire worm. I mean, we know manure. We know manures tend to be high in nitrogen, chicken manure, and even rabbit manure and cow manure. But what is it about the worm castings that it really does seem like, a wonderful, like, miracle product? I mean,
Yeah. Right. Yeah, there's a lot of good things about it, honestly. Like I think the biggest thing is just the microbial life in the casting. So like in the digestive tract of the worm, when it releases its manure, it's got tons of beneficial microbes in there, and those microbes really help build up the soil, and the plants really respond to it. So that's kind of the secret sauce as far as what makes the plants grow bigger and faster and everything. But there is a lot of other things to it too, like like when you mix it in with the soil, it helps aerate the soil, because it's kind of, you can't really pack it together. Like it can't be, like some dirt, you pack it together and it stays in a little ball. With worm castings, it won't do that. So it helps, allow oxygen into the roots. It helps regulate the moisture to a certain extent. It'll absorb water and release it over time. It's got trace minerals in it. It's got just tons and tons of benefits, honestly. Like you can't burn plants with it. So you could plant a plant straight in worm castings, and we do this all the time just to demonstrate stuff, and it won't burn the plants at all. So
yeah, because chicken manure is a really high nitrogen. So when you're using it, you could basically, it's a salt, and it could cause burning. And I always tell people, like with earthworms, you're encountering some earthworm activity when you're moving something, and all of a sudden the soil just seems so fluffy and light, and earthworms have been in there, and that's all their castings. But it is true, over time it could help almost reconfigure your soil structure. So when I was talking about, there's more to soil than just throwing fertilizers at it. There's your soil health, which is, like you said, the microbes, the trace minerals, the nutrients in it, but there's also the structure that helps with the aeration and drainage. And that's just not a one time, so you could add compost to it and change your structure, but then it tends to be a short-term thing. But with, like, earthworm castings, it almost sort of reconfigures the structure over time. And if you could go from clay to almost sort of a better draining clay soil.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And some other less known benefits, like there's been studies done that shows that it actually absorbs heavy metals in the soil too.
Mm,
So it helps take that out, and then also it's kind of like almost a natural pesticide for bugs that have a exoskeleton. A lot of them don't like the whatever's in the casting, so they'll try to steer clear of that.
oh,
So it's kind of
interesting.
like yeah.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool.
So I know I've used the worm castings. How I've used them is I've added them to my raised beds in the vegetable garden. And what I've also used them for is a top dressing in my houseplants as a fertilizer. So two things in like houseplants is, you sometimes lose the soil volume, and instead of transplanting, what I would do is I would just fill the space up on top with earthworm castings. And this sort of goes along with what you're saying is it's so mild that you can plant directly into it. I would never do that with like a manure, just put that on top of, my house plants right by the roots right there. So I would top dress with that. And then I knew when I was watering in, I was sort of just leaching everything through. So do you recommend people you make like a compost, like worm? I mean, teas are really in right now. And sometimes I don't
Hmm.
find them necessary. It's almost like, why don't you just put it in the soil instead? You'd get, but if you do run water through it, you are getting the benefits of the nutrients, correct? Like,
Correct. Yeah. So yep. As far as the tea specifically, I mean, we do recommend that. There are different benefits of that compared to if you mix it in with the soil. But the good thing about doing the tea is that you can basically make the microbes from the worm castings go farther. So like you can use a smaller amount of worm castings to make the tea and spray it on the ground or the plants or your yard or whatever. So that's what some people do. But then, like, I think the best method is to mix it in the soil as best you can, like if you're planting,
mm-hmm,
and the reason that is you get all the benefits of the microbes and the trace minerals and all that, but then you also get the aeration and the moisture regulation
exactly.
components.
Yeah.
So that it kind of gives you a little bit more bang for your buck.
Yeah. So from how long does it go from um like how fast do these worms turn over? Like I imagine like I mean you must have different stage bins. Is that correct? Or
So basically, what the way it works is we'll fill up a box, with fresh black peat and grain, and then they'll eat through that entire thing in about 2 weeks. And it can vary a little bit. Sometimes it's a little faster, sometimes it's a little longer, depending on how many worms are in each bin. But 2 weeks is the average. So then we'll take that, run it through a sifting machine that sifts out any refuse or anything, and the castings fall through a screen, and then that's what comes out the other end. So about 2 weeks is how long it takes.
oh, that's not bad at all. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and then from that to shipping out, I imagine it's pretty fast. I don't know what's the breakdown of like I imagine that you don't store it in, the frying hot sun because I don't know what that would do.
No, yeah. So I wouldn't advise, leave it in direct sunlight just because that can kill the microbes, over time. But yeah, we store it inside our warehouse. We have a big area where it's in, like when it comes off of our conveyor, it falls into a big bulk. They call it a super sack, but it's like a big standing bulk bag, and that's where it sits, until we either put it in a small bag to ship out, or a lot of times we'll just ship it out in the 1-ton bags to agricultural places.
Okay, so when you send them to ag places, like, do they then bag them up? Or are you talking about like farms or
Yeah,
using
I'm
them?
talking about like most of the time it's farms, or a lot of times it'll be places that make their own like soil mixes.
Mm,
Like we have some places that make super soil, and so they'll use ours as an input, and they'll take ours and mix it with 5 or 10 other things, and then sell that in small bags.
got
But a lot
it.
of it goes to like cannabis farms or growers. They'll buy like several tons at a time and use it like that.
So the cannabis growers are these ones growing in pots or are they in ground growers or both?
I think both. Yeah, I think a lot of them are in pots, but I think there's some ground too.
Okay. Yeah, because most cannabis growers that I know are if they're not doing it, hydroponically or in the rock wool are doing it in the large pots, mainly just so they could
Yeah.
have better control over drainage
Hmm.
and the soil. Um,
Yeah.
but but yeah, getting back to the cannabis, they have to be very strict about what they use on their plants.
Hmm.
So Um,
Yeah.
what is probably the strangest crop that it's used on? Do you
Oh
know?
man.
I sort of threw
I
that
don't
out
even
there.
know.
Okay. But yeah,
Yeah,
so I imagine that you're selling, like, when I tell people are buying like mixes, and I say, look in the back, it's a planting mix. They have earthworm castings in it. So some of those can be your earthworm castings.
they can. Yeah.
Okay. So you're
Yep.
just you're either, but homeowners could buy them from you too. They don't have to buy a whole like ton bulk
Correct.
bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like on our website, we sell 25-pound and 5-pound bags, and then we also sell a succulent and cactus blend that's earthworm castings and a couple other things. But yeah, we'll just ship it right to you in a little bag.
And how do you like apply, like you said, it's best to mix in. What if you already have an established bed? Can you just sort of lay it on top and till it in, like around your flowers and your roses? Just slightly till it in. Does that work?
Yep, you can do that, or a lot of people will just top dress and just pour it,
Okay.
right around the base of the
Mm-hmm.
plant and then water it. Or you can do what's called broadcasting. Like if you have a little hand spreader thing, you can just spread it out around and then water that way, and it'll get in the soil that way too.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I like to mix it in with my raised beds, get everything in when I'm adding before I plant. But like I said, I also lay it on top of, house plants too, because
Right.
it is so mild, and it sort of just, and then incorporates. And unlike a manure, it's one of those, it's a manure, but it's almost like a compost. So that's why I think it's just, sometimes people are like, how do I use it? Because it's not quite a manure, it's not quite a compost, but it almost
Hmm.
incorporates directly into the soil, and becomes part of your soil. Um,
Yeah.
what worms do you use?
We use African night crawlers are the kind we use.
Okay, and why them?
There's a few reasons. Number one, they get fairly big, kind of like Canadian night crawlers, and then which means they can get they're like strong. They can get down into the soil. They can eat a lot. They can eat a lot of the black peat and turn it over quickly. So that's why it only takes about 2 weeks to get through a cycle. But also they like a warmer temperature range, so they're in my opinion easier to take care of. Like Canadians, I don't know off the top of my head how cold you have to keep them, but they move around in refrigerated trucks and whatnot. These like anywhere between 60 to 95 degrees is the temperature they like. So you can just leave them in the warehouse. You don't have to, like, if you take them somewhere, people like we sell them to people, you can just leave them sitting on the counter or whatever until you're ready to use them. It's not like you have to keep them in the fridge.
Got
So
it.
they're just easy to take care of, and they do a good job.
So I imagine you probably don't have to buy your worms, that they just sort of multiply
Correct.
for
Yeah.
you?
Yep.
Yeah,
They just
okay.
keep multiplying.
Okay. And then, so how long do they live? So sort of like, I mean, you have a huge like production area, but
Hmm.
can they breed as fast as you need them, and how long do they live for?
Yeah. So they live about a little over 2 years.
Hmm.
At the if you keep them that long and keep them taking care of them and everything, but yeah, 2 years is their lifespan. And then as far as how fast they can replicate, like, it's mainly just a matter of space. Like, you need a container to put them in, and then just go through the process of hatching. So it's just a matter of time and effort, really, and having the space to do it in. And we could just make as many as we needed.
Okay, so I'm gonna say that I am a failed earthworm compost. I got one of those composts that, the three stackable ones, and I know people do them outside just with bins, but I was gonna have it in my house. Um, and then the next thing I know, there's just like fungal gnats everywhere. Apparently, I was overfeeding my earthworms, because I was taking all my coffee grains and dumping it in there. Pretty much I'm like, well, I eat a lot, so I guess, my earthworm should eat a lot too. But then I basically gave up on trying to do my own, because it got really bad. But I've talked to two one was a gal who produced worms and set up in schools. So she was not into making the worm compost or the manure so much as she was into just breeding the worms, getting schools started, showing them how to, have a bin. And the other
Hmm.
one was this farm in the Sacramento area. I did a TV show on it when he was doing it just out on his land, and it's a one person operation, so it's pretty tricky to do. But he would lay the whole cardboard down, and And I think he sells a little bit of his castings. I think that was his goal, but he doesn't have a big um, operation. But it's interesting to see that, there's some people who are just growing them for the worms, selling the worms, some trying to get schools to do it. And then,
Hmm.
but, so people do know about worms. They do know about it. Like I said, I failed because I fed mine and kept mine too moist. So it's just easier for me to go and buy them. Um,
Hmm.
w- what are some of the regulations you guys have to follow?
So as far as worm casting specifically, there's not a whole lot, at least in Missouri. Obviously probably the biggest deal is like the organic certified,
Hmm.
component of it. There's just a lot of like tracking and answering questions of the certifier. Like the USDA protocol, they have different certification agencies. OMRI is one of them that a lot of people know. We use a different one that's called organic certifiers. And so they come and inspect the facility and ask a bunch of questions, and we do like an annual or a big annual review thing with them. So that's probably the strictest thing. And then yeah, that's mainly the only thing we really have to worry about as far as worm castings in Missouri production.
Okay. I've never heard of any like earthworm diseases that people are afraid that they're spreading through the industry. So I imagine that they're pretty stable creatures. Um,
Hmm.
so
Yep.
okay. And and you feed them the peat. And is this correct that they actually then they eat peat? So they do eat
Hmm.
soil. Am-
Yep. They eat
Okay.
soil.
I
But like if you're just finding worms out in the
uh-huh.
garden or whatever, they're going in and eating the soil and turning it into castings and aerating it. So I mean that's just kind of what they do, I guess.
So that is so I think that's probably why the castings are so good and like soil because they literally are pooping out soil that is gone
Right.
through, and I think that's why it changes the soil structure because it has this mucilage almost to it. So it is
Yeah.
reconfiguring your soil over time because so when I read that I'm like that can't be correct. They cannot be. But and then when you said that you're feeding them peat and I'm like, "Oh, well that's soil. That makes sense." So
Right.
um
And when you look at the product, it just looks like a really rich, dark soil, and it
uh-huh.
doesn't have a smell or anything. Like people think manure, oh, it's going to smell bad. Like it doesn't smell bad at all, and it's just like you just looks like really rich, dark dirt. So
Yeah. How often do you guys have to test for like the NPK and everything?
we don't like have a specific amount of time that we have to. Like we'll do it once or twice a year, usually, just to make sure it's
Okay.
still on track and everything.
Do you remember what the last readings were?
It's 100 is what it always
Okay.
comes out to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So that's nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. So it is a mild nitrogen, but it really is,
Hmm.
like you said, it's about all the sort of trace minerals, about the microorganisms, and just about the restructuring of the soil. Because some people will see that and be like, well, it's not a fertilizer, or why should I use it?
Exactly. Yep.
Um, And I think we're learning that the soil is so much more than just your basic macronutrients and your micronutrients. I think that what they say for every spoonful of soil, there's more microorganisms in that than people in the world, and they don't even know what half of them are. I mean, we're just starting to realize, all the benefits of fungal interactions, um, nematodes, good nematodes, and things like that. So, I think
Right.
old school it used to just be, oh, put your triple 16 synthetic fertilizer and call it good. And we're moving away from that. So yeah, I mean, I always like to know what it is, but then also I don't want people to get stuck on that and see that and go, well, what am I paying for? Um,
Right. Yeah, we get that question a lot. Like, they'll see the 100 and be like, doesn't have any nitrogen or whatever in it. And so then you explain to them that it's really not necessarily about that. And there's a lot more to it. And the microbes is the big thing that makes the
yeah.
plants grow bigger and faster. I mean, like we have done all kinds of comparisons of just growing like things in worm castings versus regular fertilizers. You could see some on our Facebook of we did a side by side test with tomatoes starting in just worm castings or whatever Miracle Grows recommended thing is for tomatoes, and
Uh-huh.
ours is like 3 or 4 times bigger and it grows so much faster, and it's just like it's crazy when you look at it, how the difference, like you can see the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a big key too is aeration. A lot of problems with growing, I just got a question today about, blossom end rot in vegetables. And, all comes down to the water and keeping that soil moisture even, because she was told, oh, I need to add a whole bunch of lime. Well, first of all, that's just gonna mess with your pH and destroy, a whole bunch of stuff. But I think, once again, people don't realize that your soil structure, aeration is so key in keeping your plants happy, because those roots need that air around it. So this
Hmm.
and the microorganisms, when you add, like, if you add green manure or anything to it, what do you think breaks it down? It's those microorganisms that are needed. So, and we don't even know what half of them
Hmm.
are. So if you could add those, then you're gonna, be ahead of the game as far as um growing and having healthier plants. And healthier plants, we know, resist pests as well. You have a sad, unhealthy plant, it's going to be attacked by pests more. So it's this whole entire circle. Um,
Hmm.
so
Yeah. Well, and I like to explain it to people like think about in humans. We've learned recently how important the microbiome is for your health. Like think about all the different things it does for your body that used to nobody thought about that, cared about it, do anything about it. But now we know that there's so many different things that it affects. Well, it's the same principle with this. It comes out of the worm's digestive tract, and it does so many different things to the soil and the plants, and they all respond to it. And it's just part of the whole circle of life kind of thing, and it just has such a huge impact.
yeah, no, I mean, it's true. It's just because we don't know what everything is doesn't mean it's not there, and doesn't mean that it's not important. Um,
Yep.
are you guys going to expand your operation, like more square foot, or are you going to start making different soils, incorporating it?
Yeah. Yep. So I don't know exactly what the future holds as far as how much space we'll need. Like we've still got some room to grow in here. We wanted to get a bigger building than we needed right now. But we may need another facility or something, at some point to make even more. But we are going to get into making different blends. Like I mentioned earlier, we're doing the succulent soil, which is one. We're testing out some different like potting soils and like tomato specific, things, cannabis blends, that kind of stuff. So we're going to make a lot of different blended products with worm castings as one of the main ingredients. So that'll be one avenue that we attack. And then just, I think the market is a lot bigger than what we've hit so far. Like so far, we've just got business from word of mouth and from people finding us on search engines and stuff like that. So I think just reaching out more, going to more conferences, marketing, stuff like that. I think there's a lot of room to grow.
What conferences have you been hitting or plan on going to?
So in the last year, we've been to two different cannabis trade shows, one
Okay.
in Oklahoma City and one in Virginia. And then we're going to do a gardening one. I think it's in August. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like I think it's in Minnesota or somewhere.
Okay, because I think is Cultivate is like a huge one. It's not just cannabis based though, but
Hmm.
I was thinking, I might go to that, but it is funny because most everything is now geared towards cannabis. But when you talked about soil blends, it is strange because you go to, um, you go to the nursery and nothing says it outright.
Yeah.
I think Fox Farms might be sort of just the sort of down low. They try to,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
no, actually, I take that back. I think EB Stone, which is only in West Coast. Have you heard of EB Stone? They have
No.
a 420 potting soil now. Because
Mm.
I had one of the sales managers on, so I actually was surprised by that. But
Yeah.
it's legal here in California, but they call it 420, and
Mm.
it is catered towards their cannabis growers. But it is rare to. That's the only one that I know of. I don't see any others on on
Yeah.
on the market. So you may want to, and that's blatant 420. I mean, everyone knows what we're talking about there. Uh,
Right.
um, but no, I think that's a good idea. I think it might also be a good idea to maybe, fish emulsion is so huge. I recommend people, fish emulsion because it's sort of like, okay, they want to do something fast. They want to see results fast. It's a foliar feed and it's mild. Might be something where
Hmm.
you even get a compost tea liquid fertilizer starting. I'm not
Yeah.
telling you how to, run your company, but I'm just telling you
Yeah.
how
You're just tossing out ideas.
I'm just tossing out ideas because of what
Yeah.
people, what I recommend to people too.
Yeah.
And even marketing it as a top dress, like for your houseplants. I mean,
Hmm.
houseplants are huge I mean, I've been in the houseplant, working with houseplants for years and years, quote houseplants, because just the plants we grow at work tend to be more of the exotic houseplants.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't think people see that, top dressing is just such an easy way too, but if you can market it to some weird way.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's
good
all.
thoughts
These are
for sure.
these are just things that I see that, because it's really hard to burn with it. And
Hmm.
okay, so I know we were talking about the microbes. Um but I'm trying to think of, if you do apply it as a spray, you're getting some of the nutrients, but that's probably the least way you want to apply it is by a spray, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you get with the spray is like the microbes will still get in there,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
that's beneficial, but that's really the main benefit, and then some of the nutrients, I guess. But yeah, you're not getting all the other benefits by doing it that way.
Okay.
But if the thing is, like if you have a large area to cover, like some people want to cover their whole yard, like if you have a big yard, you can make a tila with this and spray it all over the grass, and that's a good way to get the microbes on everything. So it goes a lot farther that way.
Yeah, so if you had a planting bed about, let me just, like a raised bed, maybe 3 feet wide, 4 feet long, so what, 12 square feet. Um,
Hmm.
how much would you apply? Would you say? I mean,
So the ideal ratio we like to say is anywhere between like 10 to 30% of the contents is worm castings. So on the low end, you might only need like a 5 pound bag or something like that. Just depends on, I guess, how much stuff you have in there.
okay,
But I would say, if it was me, I'd probably do a 25 pound bag,
yeah,
if not more, just because the more the better.
yeah, yeah. And but so at what range? Like, I imagine you want to keep this stuff in the root zone, so you don't need to till it under. What's your recommended, like, don't go past this, because it's not, I mean, the microbes obviously are going to
Yeah,
be there. They're going to find their way, but probably the sweet spot,
right.
I'm guessing, is 6 to 8 inches down would
Yep,
be.
that'd be a good range for sure.
Okay.
You want to keep it right around the roots.
Yeah, because that's where,
Yep.
yeah, the good stuff is at. So yeah,
Hmm.
okay. So that's actually not too bad, because I think people look at the price and it's not the cheapest soil amendment.
Sure.
But you got to think, I mean, it's the manure from these tiny little worms, not a big giant cow. And
Yeah.
so a little bit sounds like it goes a lot further than what I was even thinking. Um,
Exactly. Yeah. It's really potent. And
yeah.
a lot of people will use it to like start seeds with too. Like, it doesn't take much to do that. So you can put that in the seed starting trays, and
Oh,
that's a really
really?
popular. Hmm.
Yeah, because the consistency is almost like a seed starting mix, which is usually peat moss and just perlite.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yep.
actually really interesting. That makes me want to try some in seeds. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it
If you,
holds enough moisture, but it's not so soggy.
right. If you want to look at our Facebook later, there's a video on there we just posted of seed starting trays where we started tomatoes in it versus the Miracle Grow one. And you can see like that's just all worm castings on the Simple Grow side.
Interesting. Okay.
So
That's a
yeah,
pretty good idea. And one thing, even though I hate grass, I imagine it's a good top dressing for lawns.
it is. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Works really good with lawns.
Especially if you're seeding a lawn. I bet you could use it instead of just pure peat moss to mix in some seeds and throw it on top.
Yes, definitely. A lot of people do that.
Okay. Yeah. So where can what's your website?
It's simplegrow.com.
Okay.
So pretty easy to remember. And you can, read about the products. We've got lots of articles and blogs and stuff like that about worm castings and how to use them and all that. And then you can buy the products right there and we'll ship them to you.
Okay. And you guys have social media?
We do. Yep. We're on Facebook, on Twitter. We even got a TikTok now.
Oh,
So yeah.
okay. What about Instagram? That's the one
Instagram.
that,
Yep. We're on
okay.
Instagram too.
Is it
Yep.
just at
Yep.
Simple Grow?
I think on Instagram we're Simple Grow Soil. And then on
Okay.
Facebook we're Simple Grow.
Got it. And I do like that, because you guys do have, I was perusing and, like, to be a good company, you have to back up, what you're talking about, and keep doing, the trials and showing
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
these are the benefits. So you guys seem to be really active in that, and not just like, no, it's good. Trust us. It's good.
Yeah.
Because people are
Yep.
dubious. I mean,
Right.
some people fall for, trust me. I mean, obviously, fall for anything online. But, if they're putting their money out, yeah. And you guys ship all over?
Yep, everywhere in the lower 48 states we ship to. So
Okay. And are you guys going to go retail? Are you, or,
so we're in some stores right now. We're probably in 10 or 15 stores around the Midwest and a couple
Okay.
on the East Coast. And then we have a store here where we make our place, our front of our building is a store. We just had a grand opening a couple of weeks ago, so we're selling it right there out of the building.
oh, that's nice. So, yeah.
Yep.
And I imagine you give tours.
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for our grand opening, we had about 600 people show up, and we had so many people wanting a tour. And so we had like 3 of us just giving tours nonstop for 3 hours. Like it was crazy.
So my husband does the audio, and when I said you give tours, he just looked at me like, who the heck would want to go on a, like, and I'm like, yeah, I do. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it'd be interesting, but a lot of people
No.
apparently want to see it. So.
Yeah. And then people always think that they're going to smell, but they don't smell. Right. I mean, if
Right,
you have
yeah,
a clean
no.
system, like mine started smelling because mine went anaerobic, just like if you have too much, if you're ruining your soil by overwatering it. But when
Mhm.
they're happy, there's no smell. You may get like a nice earthy smell, but that's it.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It's clean and no smell, so.
yeah, no, I think it's good because there's a lot of people who have a my mom has a huge phobia of worms, and when they're gardening, they're like, "Oh my god, a worm," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's great." I mean, that's what you want,
Mhm. Exactly.
and yeah. So, well, hopefully you guys, hopefully you take my ideas and I'll see them on, marketed soon. That way, just kidding.
Yeah, there you go.
Just kidding. So no, I'm gonna try starting seeds in the cell pack. I think that's a really interesting idea. What I like about that is, you buy like your seed starting mix, and you're like, hey, this is just peat and perlite. I can, make my own. But if you get a
Mhm.
bag, then you could just take it and then still, some of the, the nutrients might be used up, but the microbes are probably still in there, and you could just dump it either in your compost or directly into your soil. And
Right.
yeah, because it's also good for probably feeding your compost bin. I
Yeah, for sure.
imagine, yeah, the microbes to start breaking everything down. So see, it's
Mhm.
endless. Yeah. So I love
Exactly.
worms. I
Yep.
mean, I love worms. I always try to get people to, add mulch to get the worms up working for you. But
Mhm.
sometimes we just don't based on, bad soils. People sometimes
Right.
have killed their soils off by, too many pesticides, or a big thing is just compaction.
Mhm.
So if you need help getting, your soil structure, um, yeah, just do some earthworm castings or earthworm manure, whatever you want to call
Right.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
castings. Well, this was fun. So I'm gonna start some seeds, like I said. So hopefully everyone. So it's Simple Grow, and that's on Instagram, TikTok. Did you say you have YouTube?
We don't have a YouTube. We have a
Okay.
Facebook.
Okay, Facebook. But on your
Mhm.
website, you have the videos that you guys are doing
Yeah.
trials with. So
Yep.
cool.
On the website and on the social media, we posted it on there too.
Okay, cool. All right. Well,
Yep.
hopefully everyone, this was exciting and made you realize that the world of earthworms is just much more than just, oh, it's a mild fertilizer. So until next time, everyone, happy gardening.